Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to use environments in Testfully. If you open Testfully app, you will see a drop down next to the send button for each of your requests. Usually it has an item called global values because in Testfully we support global values. But also there is a concept of environments. Environments are a way to organize and collect multiple variables under one name. But also it offers a few more features that I'm going to go through them now. To work on environments, you can just come on the environments tab and here click on this one to add a new environment. So I'm going to create a new environment called production and click on that one to be able to access the environment form. So for each environment, you can set a few variables and you can set authorization, and there are a few other options that I will go through. Let's start by setting a few variables. So to start with, I'm going to do a base URL and call it org. And I will use another field called echo endpoint and do a slash anything. So these are the two variables that I defined for my environment. For each environment, you can also set authorization, and the authorization settings will be applied to any request that is using this particular environment for sending the request. You can export environments if you need to, but also you have an option to set certificate verification for the environment and set a request timeout as well. So let's go back to one of the requests that I had here, and I want to change this value to use a variable. So now my request is using a variable. If I send this request, you can see that I get an error because this URL is not valid. But if I select production environment and send the request again, you can see that the request went through and the value was correctly populated. I can change my endpoint as well. I believe I called it echo endpoint. Yeah, that's called echo endpoint. If I send this one again, and that's going through without any issue. So that's how you can basically use variables that you've defined in your environment. I can also set authorization. So every time that I send a request using this environment, that authorization settings will be used. So in this particular example, I will call this one, let's just use a bearer token and say the token is production token. Now I've sent this request. If I come to the response, you see that there is a field called authorization. Actually, in the request itself, you can see that also there is a field called authorization in one of the headers with the value that I have set. And the reason why it's happening because we have selected production environment. I can, for example, set the timeout for my request to be 1 second. And if this request responds in more than 1 second, the request will time out. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new environment called staging. So for a staging environment, base URL, I'm going to use another echo server. And for the echo endpoint, I will use /post. So if I come back to my request and send this one against production, you can see that the request was sent to this API endpoint because that's the configuration that I have set for my environment. If I come back and select a staging, send the request one more time, you can see that now it's been sending requests to another API endpoint, completely different domain, because the variables that I have defined here have a different value. But also, it actually doesn't set any authorization token here. The reason being that I haven't set any authorization. So you can define as many environments as you want and pick them from the dropdown when sending requests. And when you select them, you can basically have those values and settings applied to your requests. When it comes to export your environment, you can just come to the export tab for any environment and click on the export to export that environment in a JSON file. When you are exporting, there are options to exclude sensitive information like variable values or credentials that may be in your authorization settings. So you can exclude those values easily. And when you want to import your information, come to the request, click on the plus button, and then click on the import. Here you can select your environment file and click on the import, then to be able to import that environment. So that's about it, a quick introduction to environments and how you can use them in Testfully.